If we constantly backcross our new generations to the same rooster, will we just end up with a copy of the original breed instead of a pure, new one? Today, we are building this video on 3 fundamental pillars. First, we'll conquer the fear of copying by understanding the exact moment to pivot our genetics and stop looking backward, using a foundation sire correctly for our backcrossing. Second, we'll use a 3-way cross, fusing the relentless egg production of the Leghorn, the deep brown egg color of the Rhode Island Red, and the frost-resistant rose comb of the Wyandotte to show you exactly how to lock in traits from 3 or more breeds perfectly. But remember, it's not about the specific breeds, it's about the master process, a method you can apply whether you are working with 3, 4, or however many breeds you want to lock in unique traits. And finally, so you can visualize our exact target, we will use images of the Laced Red Wyandotte as our visual prototype. We chose this specific breed because it perfectly embodies the phenotype of our 3-way cross. It showcases the unmistakable rose comb inherited from the Wyandotte and that deep, rich red color brought in by the Rhode Island Red. To that visual, we will add the relentless laying rates of the Leghorn, along with the actual production numbers you should expect from this final result. This video was born from your questions, and today you'll learn that it doesn't matter if you use 3 or 4 breeds, what matters is the master process to create your own legacy. Stick around until the end, because it's time to stop being copycats and start being legacy builders. Let's begin. A comment from a member of our community, at Kenneth really caught my eye. He wrote, "Are you backcrossing all the offspring from the generations to their original rooster or hen? Up to the 7th generation? Can you answer? Thanks." Kenneth, your question is the spark that lit this masterclass because it touches on the most critical and least understood point in selective breeding. To understand the problem Kenneth is pointing out, and one that many of you are quietly struggling with in your own breeding pens, we have to look at genetics not just as mixing paint colors, but as precision architecture where every piece carries specific weight. The fear Kenneth has is the most valid one in technical poultry breeding: swamping the genetics. If you take a hybrid bird and systematically backcross it to the same purebred grandsire for 7 generations, biology doesn't care about your feelings, the math is ruthless. By the 7th generation, you will have recovered 99% of that original grandsire's bloodline. This means you will have effectively wiped out any trace of the other breeds you enthusiastically introduced at the start. If your goal was to improve a pure Rhode Island Red line, you're on the right track. But if your goal, like ours today, is to create an entirely new composite breed, then you are breeding your flock into a genetic dead end. The secret to avoiding being a simple copycat and becoming a legacy builder lies in knowing exactly when to stop looking back and start looking toward the prototype you've managed to produce right in your own coop. This video is born precisely from that need to understand the exact moment when the backcrossing tool must stop being a magnet pulling you to the past and transform into the seal that secures your future. Designing a 3-way cross, like the Leghorn, Rhode Island Red, and Wyandotte example we're using today, is the ultimate trial by fire for any serious breeder. We aren't working in a straight line from A to B here, we're working in a 3D space where each of the 3 breeds provides a fundamental pillar for the project's survival and profitability. The Leghorn is our metabolic engine, responsible for injecting that 300 egg-a-year laying rate that makes a flock sustainable. The Rhode Island Red is our foundation for hardiness, and above all, the source of the dark brown shell pigment, that deep terracotta color the market pays a premium for. And finally, the Wyandotte gives us the rose comb, which isn't just a cosmetic whim. It's essential biological armor for climates where freezing temperatures destroy single combs and halt egg production. However, if you just throw these 3 bloodlines randomly into a breeding pen, all you'll get is an unmanageable and frustrating barnyard mutt disaster. The perfect process requires you to first establish a primary founder, what we technically call the anchor. In our case, we're choosing the Rhode Island Red Rooster as that anchor. He will be the foundation we build everything else upon. When we cross this Rhode Island Red Rooster with high-production Leghorn hens, we get the famous F1 generation. This is where the first major technical challenge appears: the Leghorn's color inhibitor gene, the famous dominant white gene. Many breeders get frustrated at the F1 stage because they see that intense mahogany color disappear or get muddy. But listen closely to what I'm about to tell you. In this initial stage of creating a breed, plumage color is secondary. Fighting the Leghorn's inhibitor gene to get a perfect mahogany in the F1 is a waste of precious time. Our focus must be functional. We are looking to combine egg yield with egg quality. The F1 is just an information carrier, an unstable bridge carrying 50% of each breed. As I always say, the F1 is a mirage of hybrid vigor that will trick you into thinking you've already succeeded, but it's a trap. The master breeder knows these spectacular birds are just the raw material for the next big strategic move. The real challenge, and where most projects die, is when we introduce the 3rd puzzle piece, the Wyandotte Rooster. By crossing our F1 females with this rosecomb sire, we get the F2 generation. This is where Kenneth and many of you feel like you completely lose control of the coop. In the F2, the genetics literally explode right in front of your eyes. You'll have a massive segregation of traits where you'll see everything. Chicks with single combs, others with rose combs, some with yellow legs, others with white legs, and a mix of feather patterns that looks like a visual disaster. But for the trained eye, this is the moment of highest value, because it's the only moment where all the desired genes, the laying rate, the dark egg color, and the rose comb, are present simultaneously, just scrambled. Your job in the F2 is to be a treasure hunter. You must identify that specific individual that has managed to capture all three wishes: the Wyandotte's rose comb, the Leghorn's production conformation, and, most importantly, the genetic capacity to inherit the Rhode Island's dark pigment. This bird is your diamond in the rough, but it's still genetically unstable because its genes are in a heterozygous state. If you cross it with any random bird, its offspring will revert to the F2 chaos, and you'll have lost all your progress. This is where we apply the ultimate solution to Kenneth's question, the transitional backcross. To stabilize these traits before locking them in permanently, we must temporarily go back to our primary founder, the original Rhode Island Red Rooster. By mating our best F2 females, the ones already showing the rose comb and ideally coming from mothers with good egg color, back to the anchor, we are forcing the genetics to stabilize on a foundation of hardiness and brown egg color, while keeping the rose comb gene in a dominant alert state. In this F3 phase, the breeder must stop being an amateur and become a ruthless judge. Don't select birds just because you like them, or because of their feather color. In this project, we prioritize egg color and the rose comb. You must evaluate the comb's resilience on cold mornings, the width of the keelbone to ensure room for a high-capacity reproductive system, and, above all, practice strict scrutiny to cull any hint of a cream or white egg. You are looking to lock in that deep brown egg color within the structure of a relentless layer, and that requires an unforgiving eye. If you let a bird with a pale egg into the breeding program now, you'll contaminate your future composite breed forever. The climax of this process, and the answer Kenneth needs, happens in the fourth generation, the F4. This is where, after applying fierce selection pressure and making culls that would break many people's hearts, the rooster that changes everything appears. This is a bird that physically embodies the perfection of the three-way cross. He is the living manifestation of your master blueprint. He has a compact rose comb that won't freeze. He shows the incredible vigor inherited from the Leghorn, and, through his sisters and pedigree, we know he carries the gene for the dark brown egg. The moment this rooster steps foot in your breeding pen, the rules of conventional backcrossing to the grandsire die, making way for the creation of your own legacy. This bird is no longer a hybrid in transition. He is what we'll call the foundation sire. Kenneth, this is the exact point where you stop making copies of the past. From the F4 onwards, the target of your backcrossing is no longer the original Rhode Island Red or the pure Wyandotte. The new center of gravity in your breeding program is this foundation sire. Pivot your backcross to this foundation sire, and you are performing chromosomal precision surgery. You don't want any more pure blood from the grandsire, because that would wipe out the rose comb or the Leghorn's laying rate. What you want is to multiply the genetics of this perfect specimen who already has the ideal mix. By crossing him with his own daughters and the most elite females of his generation, you are forcing the genes for the dark egg, high egg production, and the rose comb to permanently lock together in a homozygous state. This is year 0 of your new breed. From here on out, every subsequent generation, the F5 and F6, will be responsible for purifying the last remaining undesirable traits, those ghost genes, trying to sabotage your work by reverting the bird back to its origins. You are sealing your genetic identity. By the time you finally reach the F7 milestone, you will have achieved the sacred status of breeding true. You will have created a bird capable of producing close to 300 deep brown eggs a year, with unmatched cold hardiness thanks to its rose comb, and superior metabolic efficiency. To answer Kenneth, we've made it clear that backcrossing is a powerful vehicle, but you are the driver who decides which station to get off at to establish a new genetic bloodline that carries your signature forever. Once we've identified that foundation sire in the 4th generation, we enter the most critical technical refinement phase of the entire process, where our priorities must be as sharp as a scalpel. Many breeders get lost trying to chase the aesthetic perfection of deep mahogany plumage, but let me tell you something that will save you years of frustration. In creating a 3-way cross involving the Leghorn, feather color is your toughest enemy because of the dominant white inhibitor gene. Trying to lock in the deep red of the Rhode Island Red on a Leghorn base while keeping the rose comb is a genetic battle that can drag your project out for decades. That's why, in designing this composite breed, we are going to prioritize what actually lines your pockets and guarantees survival: egg color, laying rate, and cold hardiness. The feathers might be mottled, white with red leakage, or even a chaotic pinto, but if that pullet has the Wyandotte's rose comb and lays a deep brown egg with the frequency of a Leghorn, you will have created a production tool that doesn't exist in any commercial catalog in the world. To achieve this, in the F5 and F6 generations, we must apply obsessive selection on the organ that actually matters to us, the shell gland. The Rhode Island Red's egg pigment, that protoporphyrin that gives it the dark brown tone, is a complex trait that tends to dilute when we introduce the Leghorn's high-efficiency genetics. Your mission in these final stages is to perform the backcross to the F4 foundation sire using only the females that produce the darkest eggs in the clutch. Don't be seduced by a pullet with the reddest plumage if her egg is cream or pale pink. The premium egg market looks for contrast. A deep dark brown egg screams artisanal quality and hardiness, and that's the signature we are sculpting. By selecting for egg color, you are indirectly selecting for robust physiology, since intense pigment deposition requires a flawless mineral metabolism that only the healthiest, hardiest birds can maintain throughout the laying cycle. At the same time, we must ensure the Wyandotte's rose comb isn't just a visible trait, but a homozygous dominant one. As we mentioned earlier, the rose comb gene is dominant, but in the intermediate generations, many birds will be heterozygous, carrying the single comb gene hidden away. This is where the rigor of backcrossing to the foundation sire works its magic. By repeatedly going back to that specimen we've already proven carries the rose comb, we are mathematically reducing the probability of this single comb popping back up. By the F6, your flock should be visually uniform regarding their frostbite resistance. This is vital for those raising birds in harsh winters or areas with violent temperature swings. A rose comb doesn't freeze, it doesn't get frostbite necrosis, and it doesn't trigger the systemic stress that a frozen single comb causes in a pure Leghorn. This translates to your hens never stopping their egg production during cold snaps, giving you a brutal competitive advantage over any other producer in your area. Now let's talk about laying capacity, that gift the Leghorn gives us. In the F6 and F7, we aren't just looking for them to lay eggs, we are looking for persistency. Your selection must focus on the birds that don't go into prolonged molts and that maintain shell quality even after months of intense production. Having anchored the genetics to a foundation sire that already carried this metabolic engine, you'll notice your birds have explosive hybrid vigor, a foraging ability that cuts down on commercial feed bills, and an early maturity that gets them laying weeks before a traditional heavy breed. You are fusing the speed of an athlete with the endurance of a warrior. At this point, the mahogany plumage might be erratic or patchy, but when you look in the nesting boxes and see that row of deep brown eggs, you'll know you've won the battle against genetic mediocrity. By the time you reach the true breeding 7th generation, the F7, you'll have the physical and productive result of your vision as a flock architect right in front of you. Picture this new bird. She has an agile, medium-sized silhouette with a slightly elevated tail that gives away her Leghorn heritage, but with a chest width and body depth that speak to the Rhode Island Red's hardiness. Her head is clean, crowned by a tight, firm rose comb. Her plumage, even if it isn't the perfect mahogany some romantics look for, shows a mix of tones that makes her unique. But the most stunning part happens in the nest box. This stabilized F7 breed will give you an average of 280 to 300 eggs a year, all a persistent dark brown color, with a thick shell that minimizes breakage during collection. These are birds that can thrive and produce in conditions where other breeds would collapse, consuming less feed per egg produced, and offering a final product that stands out in any market for its color and size. This level of excellence isn't by chance. It comes from having the discipline to not introduce outside blood after finding your foundation sire. If in the F7 you notice you need a genetic refresh, remember what we talked about. Don't go to the store and buy a new rooster. Use your parallel A and B lines that you've kept separate within your own program. Take a male from line B, which also descends from the same foundation sire, and cross him with the females from line A. This will give you that necessary boost of vigor without contaminating 7 years of work with undesirable genes from other farms. You've created a closed flock system of continuous improvement, a genetic reserve that is yours alone and breeds true generation after generation. This process of creating a three-way cross is, in essence, the ultimate expression of a breeder's sovereignty. By mastering backcrossing, understanding when to pivot to the foundation sire, and prioritizing production over whimsical aesthetics, you stop depending on what others decide to sell you. Now you are the one who decides what kind of bird walks around your farm. You've transformed a community question, like the one Kenneth asked, into a successful methodology that guarantees real, measurable results. There is nothing more satisfying than seeing the 7th generation hatch and realizing that every single chick coming out of the shell is exactly what you planned in your field notebook years ago. That is the moment you stop being an amateur and become a master breeder. Technical poultry breeding is a journey of patience and precision, where every decision in the breeding pen has a consequence in your bird's DNA. Creating a new composite breed isn't easy, but it's the safest path to excellence and long-term profitability. This video was born from your questions, from those inquiries that force us to dig deeper and find solutions where others only see problems. So I encourage you not to hold back your questions. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this foundation sire method. what breeds you'd like to combine for your own project, or what roadblocks you've hit in your current crosses. Subscribe and hit the notification bell, because every comment you leave is the seed for our next series or masterclass. Together, we are building the most prepared and passionate community of breeders out there. A community that understands true genetic wealth isn't bought. It's created with knowledge and discipline. Keep pushing forward with your project, keep your records up to date, and don't let anyone tell you that you can't design your own future in the coop. To your success, my fellow breeder, until next time.